So, Tim, it's lovely to meet you. Would you start, please, by introducing yourself and for our audience, giving them some background into the areas of research that you research?
Sure, thank you, Lucy. So my name's Tim Windsor. I'm an Associate Professor at Flinders University in Adelaide in South Australia. And my area of research interest is lifespan developmental psychology. So I have a background in psychology, and as many people would know, developmental psychology has a long history. But up until probably 20 or 30 years ago, the focus of developmental psychology was very much on children for obvious reasons. It's where so many of the big important milestones happen in terms of our development. But it's also true that development doesn't stop once we reach physical maturity or 18 or 21. We continue developing right throughout our lives and into later life. So my particular area of interest is around development in older adulthood, and now is a more important time than ever to focus on that period of the lifespan because of population aging and the fact that we have such a large proportion of our population who are moving into later life, and that's only going to continue for the next 20 or 30 years and beyond. So it's important, given that people are living longer, that we're healthier into later life than we've ever been before, to think about what that means for people and how they can plan and coordinate their lives in ways that are going to enable them to get the most out of those post-retirement years.
Yeah. The goal isn't to really live more years, it's to have more years of quality life. From your research and your perspective, what are some of the sorts of things that people can do, maybe in their 40s or 50s, that might help them put in place plans to help them live that later life that gives them that better quality of life?
Yeah, well, physical exercise is really important. There's such a wide range of research now indicating that retaining physical health and in particular resistance training, keeping our bones and muscles healthy is important for all the obvious reasons around our ability to stay with good functional ability so that we can actually do everything physically that we want to be able to do. But there's also increasing evidence supporting the role of exercise for our cognitive health as well, because we want to stay mentally sharp and active and efficient for as long as we can. And a lot of people who study cognitive aging are interested in remaining engaged in intellectual activities for staying cognitively fit. And we think that there is likely to be benefit in that. So making sure that you do those mentally stimulating activities that can challenge us in different ways to make sure that we're staying cognitively active. But at the moment, I think the evidence is even stronger for the benefit of physical activity, not only for physical health, but also for brain health, because it enhances our cardiovascular system and all of those sorts of elements of physical robustness that tend to link in with having a healthy brain as well as a healthy body. So physical exercise is important, but also just being engaged in things that give you a feeling of purpose and meaning in life. One of the really prominent theories on well-being that I think makes a lot of sense to me is called self-determination theory. And according to that theory, well-being is largely driven by the fulfillment of what are referred to as three basic psychological needs. That's the need for autonomy, so being able to exercise a degree of free will in the activities that we do, a sense of competence, that is believing we have the skills and capabilities to achieve our goals, and a sense of relatedness, that's having warm, supportive, high quality personal relationships. And if we can arrange our lives in ways that enable us to fulfill those three basic psychological needs, then we're well on the way to maintaining good quality of life into adulthood.
Is retirement nowadays still an aspiration we should be aiming for?
It varies a lot from person to person. I think for some people, their work is a really strong part of who they are, and they derive enormous satisfaction from their work. And if they want to keep doing it and can keep doing it, then they should. And I think government policy is slowly adapting to better facilitate that. Certainly in Australia, I think we're beginning to make it easier for people to stay working for longer if that's what they want to do. So I don't think we should be seeing retirement as an inevitability for people if they want to keep working. Having said that, some people do have a more stressful work life, or they might be in really physically demanding roles where it's just not possible to keep performing those roles into their 60s and 70s and beyond. So for those people, retirement is much more likely to be a positive step. But what's really important is, I think, that we find those avenues to still maintain our capacity to meet those kind of psychological needs that I was talking about, a sense of purpose and a sense of meaning in our activities. So a lot of people are able to achieve that through doing voluntary work, by finding other avenues where they can still exercise that lifetime of experience and skills that they've built up in ways that can help other people, which can be hugely satisfying. But at the same time, with the flexibility to maybe not be pursuing a full-time work week, or maybe being able to be a little bit more, exercise a bit more flexibility in when we do and when we don't work, depending on the other things that might be going on in our lives. So I think more and more people are finding themselves in that, particularly those who are fortunate enough to be financially secure in their retirement, where they don't have to worry about where their next paycheck's coming from. They can be a bit more selective in the work that they do on a voluntary basis, still get that important sense of achievement and contribution from volunteering, but at the same time have that bit more flexibility to also maybe spend more time with the grandchildren, or pursue other interests or hobbies.
Without a doubt. There was, because I guess there is this talk about sort of sense of purpose, and it is so clearly related to, I guess, all of the kind of good measures of aging, whether it's quality of life, whether it's longer life, whether it's better health, whether it's better feeling of life contentment. All of these are predicted to some degree by people who have this sense of purpose. But how do people, if they don't feel they have a sense of purpose, how do they go about getting it?
It's a great question. I think sometimes it can help to spend a bit of time actually thinking about what your values are, what's important to you, whether it's being a good parent, or a good husband or wife, or a good part of the community, or whether it's just having a particular interest in, a fan of a football club, and thinking of activities that actually map onto those values. And if people can do a bit of I suppose, almost like a little audit of their what's important to them, and what activities that they do or that they could be doing that actually map onto those values, and then try scheduling some of them, actually quite deliberately planning to do things, even if you're not sure whether you'll enjoy it or not. Make the time to plan to do something, and give it a try. If it's a rewarding experience, chances are that'll begin to snowball and lead to more opportunities. And if it's not, then it's a matter of stepping back and trying something else.
I think I like the idea, or the focus on just being proactive and give things a try. Like, one of our members is a classic example. Just gets divorced, moves to a new area, and she thinks, I want to meet people in the town. The best way to do that, go and work in a pub. So she works in a pub a couple of nights a week, and through hearing all of the local gossip, you get to hear all of the things that are important to that community in the town. People want to object to the new road that's being built, so she throws herself into the middle of that, and that's her, you know, all of a sudden you've got new friends, I guess you've got new community, and you feel like you're doing something to help that community. It's not, as you say, sometimes through just through proactive activity, you're more likely to find things than to, I don't know, sometimes there is that inertia, isn't there, unless it's perfect.
I think so, and it doesn't even have to. That's a great example, but it also can be much smaller than that. It can, and it might just be a phone call to an old friend, or perhaps rekindling an old hobby that someone can do by themselves at home. Even simple things like that can give us a sense of meaning. And one of the things we talk about in terms of adapting as we get older, from a psychological perspective, is what we think of, well, we call it self-regulation, and it's really just about how people manage their goals. And we all have goals on a day-to-day basis. We have expectations for different things that we want to achieve or do. And sometimes as we get older, some of those goals might become increasingly difficult. And if our health begins to decline, or perhaps it might be more difficult for us to drive at night or get out and about, goals can become blocked. And people who are very effective at adapting are those who can identify when it's time to let go of a goal that's become too difficult, or is coming, or the pursuit of that goal is becoming too costly. But then also be able to re-engage with new goals. So I think if we stop when things get difficult and don't re-engage, that's when we can get stuck. If we're able to find a different avenue to channel our efforts and our energies, then we can often find rewarding replacements for some of those activities that we're no longer able to do.
And I think if you were to advise an organization or a company and say, look, you know, you've got people in their mid-stage of their life, and actually the goal for society should be that, you know, people have this quality of life longer. Are there any ways that you could envisage encouraging, if you like, an organization to help their employees? What sort of things could they put in place that might help their employees kind of ease and plan for that longer life stage?
I think there are wellbeing programs that are now becoming widely available that do recognise that there's much more to our mental health than the absence of mental illness. That we want to be as fully functioning people. We want to not just be free of symptoms of depression or anxiety or other mental health problems, but we actually want to be able to feel like we're moving towards fulfilling our potential. And I think where employers can provide opportunities for lifelong learning for employees to gain skills in those sorts of areas, that can be a really valuable thing, not just in terms of setting up individuals for a promising future, but for organisations as well, in terms of reducing absenteeism and fostering a more positive work environment where people will feel that kind of loyalty to an employer who is reciprocating by wanting to look after them and cater to their development as people as well as employees. So initiating wellbeing programs, I think, is a really positive thing. I don't know what the evidence base is, but I also quite like the movement in some areas towards away from the 35-hour work week, where maybe in places like France where people are working a little bit less. I think that has the potential to enable people to create a better balance in their lives that might help as, again, in this sort of process of transition where we begin to work less and begin to spend more time pursuing other activities.
And I guess then the last thing I wanted to ask you was actually to share and dive into a little bit of some of your research. I mean, I don't know if there's sort of like a research study in particular, or a piece of evidence that you're now, I guess, that you're proud of, that you'd like people to know about.
Yeah. One of the, I'll mention a couple of things. One of the studies we've got running at the moment is a trial where we're looking at a program for promoting engagement with life among older adults. And there are lots of great activity programs out there, but most of those programs are activity focused. So it might be a walking program or a movie club or other social groups. And in Australia, local councils are very proactive about running those sorts of programs, and they're very good. But when they're activity focused, that they'll never be universally applicable, because everybody has different capacities and different interests. So what suits one person won't necessarily suit another. So we've developed a program that follows along some of the ideas I touched on earlier of encouraging people to identify what their values are, and then identify activities that map onto those values, and schedule opportunities to engage in those activities to see whether that is an effective way of taking, I guess, what we call a person-centered approach, where it's focusing on people's individual capacities and interests to try and encourage that renewed engagement. And we're just finishing data collection for that project at the moment, so it's too early to say whether it's been effective or not, but we're excited about it. We think it has a lot of potential, so it'll be very interesting to see what the results show. Some of the other work we've got going on at the moment focuses on people's views of their own aging, and the extent to which they're aware of aging-related losses as well as aging-related gains, because for most of us, we experience both. Because of often negative views of aging in society, we tend to be more aware of the losses that tend to happen as we get older. But research shows us that we also have significant gains in different areas of life. We tend to get very skilled at managing our interpersonal relationships, more so than when we're younger. Many adults are happier when they're older relative to when they're younger, potentially because their priorities change, and because there's less of a discrepancy between their goals and where their lives are at that moment. And so we've been interested to look at the extent to which people perceive these or are aware of these gains that happen with aging. And some of our work shows that being aware of those gains might actually be protective for people who are also experiencing aging-related losses, that even if we are experiencing some of the problems that can become common as we get older, such as maybe some physical limitations or illnesses, an awareness of gains may be able to help us to engage in some of those adaptive self-regulatory processes that I talked about earlier, in shifting our goals and moving towards alternative compensatory ways of still finding meaningful, purposeful activity and benefiting from that.
Yeah, and I mean, it's that sort of belief, I suppose, isn't it? There's so much in psychology that's to do with things like self-efficacy, and if you believe it's the right thing. And I think even in the world of finances, so I think aging and finance, they're trying to kind of, the people who really envisage themselves as an 85-year-old are the ones who put more in place today to spend, to sort of save the money that they might need in order to kind of have that longer retirement, whereas the ones who never think about it, the destitute, living in poverty as they get older. So, and what's your intervention for that looking like? Like, how are you assessing, if you like, if people are on that, yes, I'm more aware of my gains than I am aware of my losses? Is it a self-reflection questionnaire?
Yeah, yes, it is. Unlike the other study I mentioned, which is a trial where we actually have an intervention, this is more just assessing individual differences among people, and then seeing whether people who score higher in their awareness of gains seem to be getting these benefits relative to people who score lower. But we're interested in certainly interested, as this work develops, in the possibility of perhaps creating programs that that help people to become more aware of some of the strengths that tend to be developed later in life, and maybe how those unique developmental opportunities can be used in constructive ways.
Yeah, without a doubt, because they can be, I think. Well, I don't think, I know.
Yeah.
I'm a bit biased, but you know, working with this audience for a while, you're like, you guys are amazing.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Well, that's brilliant. And I'm really, thank you for sharing that with us. And I think it helps give people a flavour and an understanding of why you're able to sort of talk from the position of expertise that you're able to do from. So I really thank you for your time. I know that it's late for you on a Friday night. Take care, Tim. Lovely to meet you.
Bye. You
Bye.
too.